playlist going strong now has Commodore Ranjit Rai. He's a well-known figure amongst the defense experts, and today he is going to talk about the museum, perhaps the only museum in North India that has been set up by him to create interest amongst the new generation about the matters military and more particularly maritime and navy. Thank you.
General Narendra Kumar, it is a pleasure to welcome you in your series Going Strong, because some of us have a passion, like you have, to tell the youth of India the importance of certain issues. This welcome you to the IMF Maritime Museum, as you said, the only one in North India, to educate our young how important the seas will be in the future. So let me take you to the museum. This is the welcome board with a maritime history of India. The museum is free, and therefore it is encouraging for young children from schools to come, and they do come. The elders have not been so keen, but the maritime history of India tells you as soon as you enter the museum that there is something to be learned about the power of the seas, the naval power and the maritime power that India can project through the Indian Ocean. The caps tell you the history of the Indian Navy. We wear the caps with pride for the pride of India. The various ships with names are inscribed with what deeds they have done for the country. As we move into the museum, there is a maritime library where researchers come from think tanks and universities, and they're quite happy to sit here and go through all the books which deal with the maritime history of India. Some of these books are very rare. Many have been presented by the Indian Navy, and this, therefore, I call the room of the history section of the Navy. Here is the history of the India's maritime military history from antiquity to 2019, including the 1971 war when India became a naval power. Each line from Vasco da Gama to HMS Vikrant to Pakistan War of 65 is scripted with the history what Indian Navy has contributed. And all the operations in the history section is worth anybody's memory to be proud of what our Navy has contributed along with the other two services in the defense to make India one, a glue called India. Honors and awards, and I could not but put Titanic, the massive ship which actually sunk because of an iceberg. So the sea is a very demanding profession. It has the pleasures and it also has the pains. We cannot forget the Kunjalis, the Marathas, and Shivaji, who actually were the first persons to give us a maritime strategy for India. The Bali Yatra was 2nd century, the 71 war, and all the operations of the Indian Navy are beautifully depicted in the history section. It is this history section which Indian Navy looks back upon to give its deeds and go further from 1971 onwards. The deeds of the leaders that led us, including Admiral Nanda, Mrs. Gandhi, led us for victory in the 71 war for the formation of Bangladesh. This is a .45 revolver 1820 presented by Admiral S.G. Karmakar, who were decorated by the British as the first commander in the Indian Navy, or the Royal Indian Navy, and he also had a dream there would be a museum. So in his honor, this is kept here, and of course it is defanged, but it tells you that there was a need to one day have a museum. And to do it in North India, it has been a pleasure because we are a landlocked country and the North Indians must learn the importance of the seas. In the journey of life, I have attempted to write some books. I've achieved 11 of them. Most of them are about maritime work. So these are depicted here, and some of them were released in lit festivals, some were released in organizations, and it all began with the Dufferin, the training ship Dufferin. The basic Navy had no training in itself before the Second World War. The Navy was formed then, and it became a very strong Navy that took part in the First World War. All officers, from the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Katari, Admiral Soman, Karmakars, Kirpal Singhs, Krishnan, the names are all given in the books, were actually the pioneers of the Indian Navy. And we must not forget that. When history is written, the Dufferin becomes a very important part of India's past history. It is after that, and unfortunately the Royal Indian Navy did a great job in the Second World War, but because of the mutiny in 1946, Royal Navy did not record it. The Indian Navy has recorded it in a book called The Timeless Wake. Moving on with history, this is just a brief of what possibly I contributed in my own small way to my own life, and became a yachtsman, was in the Navy, then worked in various fields in the Merchant Navy, and therefore 50 years of experience gave me the passion that I must have a maritime museum. And today this maritime museum is visited by children who come and really begin to understand, because North India is landlocked. People even pass away without seeing the sea, and this museum possibly contributes to that. This model holds special significance. It is presented by the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Hari Kumar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, ADC, because he has tried to depict that the Indian Navy's training starts with grassroots. Sailors, officers go on board sailing ships and they learn the rigors of the sea. And you probably may have heard recently that Commander Ablesh Tommy, 236 days he went round the world and came second in the global race round the world. But it was because of this training ship. Also, as we move forward, we come to Srimati Meenakshi Lekhi, the Minister for Culture, who also graced the museum with a presentation again from the Archaeological Survey of India on maritime history. So these two, as you enter, give you a very good flavor of what the Indian Navy does by teaching the young the rigors of the sea, and should never be forgotten, even if we have come into the electronic age.